recording. Yeah, seems to work. Okay, so yeah, yesterday we were able to get a lot of things done, right? If you look at localhost 8080 and let's go to slash projects. Yeah, so we were able to, fetch a list of documents, um, create a document, right? Built a component for search. So that was our link component over here. We also set up boot. Oh, wait, sorry. I started screen recording but did not. Let me share the screen. And actually, let's see, let's bring this here. Where's Zoom? Hmm, okay. Okay, you can see my screen, right? Yeah, okay. So, let's see. A few people are still joining in. I mean, I posted it on Frappe School, so maybe uh, I don't know if people saw the message or not, but okay. So, yeah, we were able to search for data. We also set up boot, so we got we created a common utility function to get, let's say, user default. You can create similar utility functions to get something like system default or roles, etc. Right? So yeah, this is pretty cool. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time building the UI, so I'll show what we built in uh, in Frappe build, right, this March, because that has the UI, so at least we can use the UI, and I don't have to go hunting for icons, colors, etc. So let me go to that bench. I think it's called scope bench. Hopefully, I don't know if it's called scope bench. Okay, let's look at localhost. Something similar. Wait. What was this? I mean, oh, that's fine, but tell me which port is it running on? 8015. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we had created this, right? In Yeah, I think this is a good example of what to do. Okay, so we had created this during Frappe build, right? So things like, changing priorities and stuff, uh, the status, changing the status. So all of these were there, and then, there was a right click menu. I don't know if rename works, but yeah, whatever. So anyway, we created this UI. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy pieces of this UI, right? Just so that we don't waste a lot of time in getting these icons and stuff, right? No one's in the waiting room, right? Okay. Yeah. But we'll build something like this, and in the process, we'll see um, how to use caching and how to improve performance uh, in your React app when using Frappe React SDK, right? And after this, we will then look into building a dashboard, and we'll see how we can avoid prop drilling. I don't know if if you guys know what prop drilling is. If you do, you can comment it on the chat, right? So yeah, so today is going to be a little bit complex in terms of how we use SWR. But yeah, but let's get started. So I won't keep this on. What I'll do is that I'll disconnect this particular piece of UI, and yeah, okay. I'll disconnect this bench. Done. And then I'll go back to our bench. So first things first, bench starts. So your bench is running. Then we do yarn dev on our React app. So we have two servers running now. And if I do localhost 8025, oh sorry, 26. Yeah. Login, localhost 8080. Yeah, okay, we're back. So we'll do the same thing, but for tasks, right? We'll create a list view for tasks, and then we'll try updating it. So yeah, we'll try updating it. So we'll use we'll use hooks like use Frappe update doc, use Frappe delete doc if we were to delete the task, right? But more importantly, you saw those user avatars, right, to who it was assigned to. We'll actually use some caching so that we do not fetch user avatars for like each and every row, right? And we'll use that like it'll be like extremely simple to use because it's inbuilt in Frappe React SDK. So, okay, let's go back to our app. So, yeah, let's create that page for tasks, right? If I go to pages, we have tasks. Okay, we already have that. Let's go into projects and copy a bunch of things from here. Um, let's see. What all do we need to copy? Pretty much this much, and then we'll change stuff in it. So I won't implement like pagination and stuff. It's not needed, right? Neither would we have a table over here. Um, so all of these things are not needed, but yeah. See, select, don't need this. This will come tasks. And then I'll just change my imports. Okay. So this is my tasks page. Let's go to our URL. I don't think that we've wired this tasks page in the first place. So let's go to, where's the routing? It's in main. So over here we'll call tasks. Okay, perfect. So we have tasks now. Let's create some tasks. Uh, yeah. So let's say that our setup React app using Doppio, right? Let me just check if the recording is going on. And it should go on fine. Yeah, it is going on. Okay. And we'll do this for React app for project management, right? So we hit save. We have this. And great. So we have one task over here. There's stuff about costing, but the main thing that we really need is, status, priority, so on. So we can add a status filter and then, priority filter on top. But let's actually get this list of tasks. So, and do we have who it is assigned to somewhere over here? Because that's kind of important, right? Uh, wow, we don't have that. So how do you assign tasks in ERPNext then? You just use assign to over here, but wouldn't that create another to do? Hmm, funny. Any idea, ERPNext experts in the chat? Ah, okay. So we use that underscore assign to. Yeah, but I mean, when I assign it to someone, it creates a to do. So I mean, I already have a task, and then it also creates a to do on top of this task for every assignment, which is kind of, I don't know, pointless. But okay, so we'll use that. We'll use assign to for this. So yeah, yeah. I mean, that might be a better idea, to be honest. That to create, an assign to field and link it to user. That makes more sense. Hmm, what should we do? Maybe for now, I mean, for this tutorial at least, this assign to is fine. But okay, let's do that. So first of all, let's get this list of tasks done. So can someone remind me how do we actually do that? What's the name of the hook to fetch a list of any doc type? I mean, Copilot is doing that. Okay, so we won't have any pagination. We'll use Frappe get doc list, right? We need to generate type definitions for tasks. Um, and even then, we need to fetch, let's say subject, project. So subject name, um, type and all is fine. Priority, status, and expected start date, expected end date, progress. So this will be progress. Okay. So for task, we'll generate the type definitions, right? Let's see. So it's bench generate types for doc type. We want it for scope. We want it for the doc type called task. Yes, I want it for child tables, for any custom fields as well. Cool. And then if I go back into my code base, I should see new types, task and task depends on. Okay. And then I can use that over here. So I think the variable names are what? Start date, end date. Let's see. Okay, it's expected start date. So it's exp start date, end date, progress priority. Okay. Let's see. We'll get data, we'll get is loading, we'll get error, right? Now, we need to show this data, and for that, I'll use the UI that's available over here. So we have something called as a user row or an issue row, sorry. And we also need to get the list of assignees, right? So let's also get that. I believe the variable name is underscore assigned to, if I'm not wrong, or something similar. Let me see if that works. Nope, it doesn't work. Assigned to. Hmm. What's the name of the variable? I forget. Is it underscore? I mean, I know for a fact that it's stored on the doc type itself. I mean, we can check it. So we do bench MariaDB describe tab task, I guess. Okay, assign it. Okay, just assign. Perfect. Yeah. I think Frappe React SDK will throw an error because it doesn't really recognize this, but I think we can solve for that. We can change that in the SDK itself. Anyway, this should work now. Hopefully, yeah. So we are getting the task now. Cool. What we need to do is like just like that UI, right? We need to uh, add it over here. Like we need to map the data into issue row, something similar. And and then if you look at issue row, what it's doing is it's a bunch of styling. It's pretty much what it's doing. So we don't need the context menu for now. Let's forget about the right click menu. Let's only care about this for now. Like, yeah, we'll copy this and we'll bring it over here. Or do you want me to build it from scratch? I mean, I can. It's not a big deal. Let's see. Okay. So tasks, we'll go to components, features, and we'll create a folder called tasks. For tasks, we'll create a task row.tsx. Okay. In taskrow.tsx, right? I'll just paste this and then delete most of these things. So uh, it's a bunch of styling, I know that, but see. So okay, so we know that we are getting, fields from the task doc type, but we also know that it's not all of the fields from the task doc type, right? So how do we deal with that? Okay. Um, we can, in TypeScript, there's something called as a pick, and then, you can say that from task, I want to pick the ID. I think it's the subject and something like this, right? So we can pick from task itself, and I can import task. Yeah, pretty sure it's because of a sign that it's not working, but whatever, right? This is one way to do it, right? This way your types are equal. Or what you can do is that you can also create task with assignee extends pick these whole thing, but not assign. Okay, it's basically just more TypeScript shenanigans, right? So it doesn't really matter if you don't get it, but Okay, we'll now get the task itself. Now, here's the thing, right? For our title, we have something called as task dot subject, right? Um, and then if you look at, so if you look at these components, priority selector, status selector, etc., right? What they were doing was that we could look at each and every task and change the priority right from the list view. Uh, and that was the use case. So we'll actually get these components as well. For people who are following along, I am not sure how you'll follow along if I'm copying a bunch of components, but I also know that making these components would take some time. So, what should we do? I don't know who's following along. Rafael, I think you might be, right?
I've stopped.
Okay,
Just
did he stop today or did he stop yesterday?
yesterday, partly.
Okay. Uh,
I have
okay.
most of yesterday.
Okay, so if you get the source code afterwards, is that fine, or do you want me to build it from scratch? I mean, it's just going to take a little bit more time. So what would you guys recommend?
So for me, it's fine to get the source code afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it's also educational to watch you build some interesting components like the link field yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so these components are like pretty dumb, right? These are like just drop down menus. The problem is the styling, right? It takes time to actually get these values correct.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but the link field was obviously a complicated one, and to be honest, it's not even done. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll share the source code, obviously, but yeah, I'll just explain what the code is doing, right? And I think that should be good enough time for either someone to copy, or if you're just viewing it, for you to understand. So this is nothing but vanilla HTML with some tailwind into it, right? It just got the perfect values for all of the colors, etc. Right? The borders, etc. And if we want to look at how this looks, I'll go to task and I'll just loop over our data, right? So data dot map, and for every task, I'll create the task row, and we have passed it a key, right? The other thing that you'll note is that this task it'll throw an error again because of TypeScript, right? Because TypeScript's like, look, task with assignee, uh, you're passing in task, right? But uh, this task row needs task with assignee. That will be solved once we add support for underscore assign, etc. Right? For now, what we'll do is that we'll manually edit this TypeScript type definition, and we'll add this over here, right? So now if I go to task row, I don't need to do a whole lot of this, right? I can just add it over here, and I can say assign. Yeah. So I've done that manually, but we'll get it fixed in both Frappe types. Uh, yeah, I think Frappe, if we fix it in Frappe types, it works. Okay. So yeah, so all it's doing is looping through that data, right? We're fetching a bunch of fields, looping through that data, uh, rendering the row. The row is nothing but a bunch of HTML, and it looks like this for now. And then we'll look at those components, right? So the first one is a priority selector, the second one is a status selector, right? We'll create these files in our common components features. So uh, now the thing is that this priority selector and status selector, these are very specific to tasks only because the values are dependent on task doc type. So we'll create it here. Let's see, new file, priority selector, right? Okay, let's look at what priority selector does. Okay, we'll have to install the drop-down component from ShadCN. So drop-down component, yeah, this. So it's drop-down menu. We'll install that. Oh, okay. Oh, nope. We need to do that on the front end. Okay. So once this is done, we will just copy this. So, okay, the things that I'll do is that I'll look at, priority icon and things like that, right? The priority icon is nothing that, all it's doing is that it's getting these icons from Lucid React, and we would need to install Lucid React. So we'll copy this and bring it over. So this can, this is not really dependent on tasks itself, I guess, but for now, it's fine. Priority icon.tsx. Okay. Now this won't be a scope issue. This will be a task priority. Okay. Lucid React is something that we need to install, right? So we'll say yarn add Lucid React. Again, this is nothing but rendering an icon, right? That, okay, if the priority is urgent, color it a little different. If it's high, medium, low, and if there's no priority, then, use circle dashed. Reason for creating a common component out of this is this is going to, I don't know if we'll get to it, during this course, but if you were to actually build the app out, you'll probably use this, in a lot of places, especially when you're viewing the task, etc. So, yeah. So we have priority icon, and now in priority selector, all it's doing is that it's creating a drop-down menu, right? So let's look at ShadCN's import statements. Get that done over here. And we have drop-down menu. Okay, so what this drop-down menu needs is a priority, which we can again get from task and then priority, right? So, but you know what? I think what would be better is that we pass the entire task to it, right? So we just say task. Let's see. If we do priority, uh, we'll also need to give it the task name if it actually wants to update the task, right? So, yeah. So task ID and okay. So we have this drop down menu. I'll just try to copy things from here. So the trigger has the icon, the priority icon. Perfect. And then drop down menu content, right? Let's try looking at, adding this priority selector over here. and see how it looks like. Task ID. Okay. Okay. So we do have something now. Let me change this priority for this particular task to, let's say, urgent. Yeah. So it is showing up over here. Now what we need to do is that this priority selector, we need to actually populate the contents, right? For that, I'll look at this. So I created a common component back then. The common component was used because we wanted to, uh, we didn't want to repeat this entire piece of code all the time, right? So the priority option item, I'll just copy and paste it for now, and then I'll explain what it does. Uh, we don't need the forward ref, to be honest, uh, but oh, actually we do need the forward ref because otherwise drop-down menu content in Radix it won't work. So we do need it. Sorry. Okay. Also remember when you're using ShatCN, the imports they actually need to come from your at components UI folder, right? Not from RadixUI directly. Just remember that sometimes the component names are the same and it imports the wrong thing. So, okay. Priority option item, what we'll do is that we'll say that this is a task, priority. Okay. Okay, cool. For this error that you see over here, right, any, uh, one way to solve this is to actually get rid of the tsconfig rule for this. So I don't know if they have any over here. Linting. What's the name of the rule? It says no explicit any. No, no explicit any. I hope that's needed. Okay, let me search. TypeScript, no ex. Does the error that is it no explicit? Ah, it is no explicit any. Wait, where did it open? Ah, okay. So this needs to go into our tslint rc file. And that I think this is something that we get from ESLint and not from the tsconfig itself. So in fact, I can change this. Where is our ESLint? Yeah, rules that. Okay. Now it won't throw an error, hopefully. Yeah. Now we need to use this priority option item, right? So the way we do that is if you look at this component, it takes priority selected on click. What I would like to do is I would like that we have an on change. So on priority change and This takes in a priority. Okay. And then we can call priority option item. So the first option that we want is probably urgent. Selected is nothing but whatever priority was selected, right? From the task, whatever we get from the task. Similarly, medium, and I think we have low, right? So do we have none or something like that? Probably not. I think it needs to be either of these four. So once we do that, you'll see it looks like this. Pretty cool, right? Now, obviously, it's not changing anything. So that's the other issue. It's not changing anything, but at least we have a priority selector now. Now, we want to make it changeable. We want the user to be able to quickly change the status of a task or the priority of a task right from here. How do we do that? Um, well, we have on priority change. So we have two options over here, right? We get the task ID and we know the new priority that we need to change it to, right? One option is to use a hook called use Frappe update doc. Uh, use Frappe update doc is so it will return a bunch of variables, right? One of them is a update doc function that we can say we can call update doc, and we'll need to pass the name of the document, the task ID or the ID of the document, and then here comes the problem, right? If I do this, I don't know if it will work for the simple reason that a task like update doc is the same as doing a post call to API/resource, right? And a task doesn't just have priority, it has other variables as well. So I don't think this will work, but we can check in our network calls. So we have this. Let's try changing it to high. Okay, it did work. Cool. See, I did not know that. I did not know partial updates were allowed. Yeah, it did change it. That's pretty cool. Okay, so this is one way. The other way is to make a custom API call, right? In this case, it's a standard API that's available in Frappe, but it's not available in Frappe React SDK. That is set value. So the actual path is frappe.client.setValue. You can make post calls, put calls, delete calls, etc. using a hook called use Frappe post call, right? And then I can pass it the name of the method. The method name will be frappe.client.setValue. Now, and then I can say call, and then I'll need to, pass in the variables, etc., and use that. One thing that you'll note with these, right? I also have a is loading. I have a loading and an error if you wanted to show all of that. One thing you'll note over here is this looks very different from the get calls that we were doing, right? Uh, the get list is also a hook, or get doc, which we'll get to in a bit. But you look at tasks, this gets triggered as soon as the component mounts, right? As soon as the component mounts, the API call is made and the list is fetched, right? So that's the nature of these hooks. In fact, if you wanted to call a custom API, the hook is the same. It's just called use frappe get call, and then you pass it the name of the path and the variables, etc. Right? So this is for data fetching, and ideally, your data fetching should happen as soon as the component mounts. In fact, it should happen even before the component mounts, which is exactly what Frappe React SDK and SWR does, right? But uh, over here, this is update doc. So it's not really, triggering anything. It's just managing the state for you. Again, if you were to update a doc or create a doc, we have also used use Frappe create doc works the same way. It will manage loading states, error states, completed states for you so that you can show spinners, etc. Right? Uh, so I hope this is clear. Do you have any doubts so far? Okay, cool. So here's the problem now, right? Uh, this is not updating in real time. So one option could be where that we do use Frappe uh, event listener, right? And or not use Frappe event listener, sorry. Use Frappe doc type event listener. So use Frappe doc type event listener and we can mutate this. Mutate is just refetching, the data, right? Now this will solve your problem of, if I change the priority, uh, I don't know if socket is working. Yeah, okay, socket isn't working on my, oh, it's not working on, oh yeah, I remember it's not working on localhost 8080. Right. Okay. Well, that would be one option. We know that a socket event comes in, right? The problem with that is that, if you were fetching a list of 1,000 tasks, mutate would again re-trigger this request, right? Uh, and that's not acceptable, uh, from a performance standpoint. So we'll use something else in mutate. So remember, underneath the surface, right? Frappe React SDK uses a library called SWR, and SWR supports global state. So this is the swr.vercel.app. You can go here in mutation and revalidation. And there's something called as a global mutate, right? The idea is that every request that you make, right, has an SWR key attached to it. And that's what's used to actually cache it. So if you look at the parameters in useWrapper get.list, the third parameter is an optional one. It's the SWR key, right? I can call it task list maybe, right? And let's go back here. Yeah. Uh, this SWR key. So, okay, so how do I explain this? Okay, think about it this way, right? Every request that you make, right, Frappe React SDK generates a key for you. In this case, if you do not pass in a key, explicit key, what it will do is that it will look at task uh, and then it will look at all the fields, all the filters, etc. It will make that entire string, and that will be the key that it uses. What's the key? So let's say that you fired a request to get the list of tasks first, right? You got that list. SWR will maintain it in a global state, right? So now if you make the same API call in 1,000 different places, if you use the same hook in 1,000 different places, it's not going to, refire the request 1,000 times, right? It's only going to fire it once. It will, the other 999 times, it will actually read from the cache, right? So that way, you don't need to prop drill and do any of that, right? The other benefit of this is that this is a very nested component, right? I'm on the tasks page. we have task row, right? Uh, and then from task row, we have priority selector, and then in priority selector, we have update doc. Pretty deep nesting. Now, one way would be that we pass this mutate everywhere. So we say, in fact, let's do that, right? So let's say mutate, we go to task row, uh, mutate, void function, mutate, and then for the priority selector, mutate, uh, and then mutate, mutate, right? That's prop drilling for you in React. You've got mutate over here. We pass it to task row. Task row takes in the same thing. Task row is not using it directly, by the way, right? Task row is just going to pass it off to priority selector and user selector and status selector. And then the priority selector is also not using it directly. It's only the priority option item that when is changed, it mutates it, right? And this will solve your problem partially, right? So if I go to my fetch requests and I change it to urgent, right? See, this is now updating in real time, right? What it's doing is that it's making that post call, sorry, the put call for the update, right? And then it's refetching the entire list again. Not very performant. Uh, so this is prop drilling. One option to get rid of prop drilling, right, is to not pass mutate 100 times, right? In fact, let's just use a key. No, SWR is configured automatically in Frappe React SDK, right? So where we set up Frappe provider, SWR was all automatically configured over there. And you can pass in your SWR, parameters over there. So I'm going to, give it a very simple name of task list. If you have filters and stuff, then you would need to, SWR key could be anything. It could be an array, of task list, and then, a bunch of, fields and filters and something like that. Uh, it could be an array, it could be a string number, I think, as well. So anyway, for our purposes, we'll do task list. And instead of, drilling all the way to the center of the earth, what we'll do is we'll just, we know what to update, right? When this priority is changed, right? So let's get rid of this mutate, and we'll get mutate from the global configuration, and that you can get from use swr config, which is exported by Frappe React SDK, right? In this we have a mutate. Now this is a global mutate. This one was a bound mutate. When I do this, right, this is a bound mutate. This mutate is bound to this particular request. This is a global mutate, and in global mutate, we would need to pass it the key. What do you want to update? So this should also work technically, right? See, works exactly the same way. Now, another thing that you'll notice is that this is not really very performant, right? 1,000 tasks. Every time updating a task, this particular request gets refired and gets updated entirely, right? Not very performant at all. Uh, the other thing is that actually, let's first solve that problem, right? So update doc actually returns the new task, right? So we actually get the new task when update doc is done. In fact, I can print that over here. Let's see. console. Yeah, muted. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So we do hi and okay. We actually get the entire task back, right? So use Frappe update doc is, I mean, we already have the new priority. In fact, we have the entire task row, right? The entire task document. We actually get the latest one after we call update doc. So in fact, even mutating this is kind of pointless, right? Why should we mutate, this list? Why should we actually re-trigger the request when we actually have the new data, right? So how do we solve for that? Well, what we can do is that mutate actually takes in a second argument, which is the data, right? And that data, uh, I can actually pass in a function in that, right? Wherein I get the existing tasks or existing tasks, right? And I can take this doc and update the entire row. Now that will be a little weird because uh, you know, our row will have fields that are not really there in our query. For example, when actual time, we're not fetching actual time in our use Frappe get doc list. So actual time will get updated, right, in the list. I'll show you what I mean by that. So first thing, let's go to tasks and let's print this out. Cool. So we have tasks. Now in the priority selector, we have existing tasks. We want to find from existing tasks, right? Yeah, thank you, Copilot. So what we want to do is that we want to, go map through each and every existing task. When we find our task, right, we can actually do this doc.name, uh, doc.name, right? And in fact, over here, we can pass it task so that it knows that doc is actually task. So doc is a Frappe doc of task, right? So what we can do is dot 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 task dot 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 doc, and that's pretty much it. So see, all I'm doing is in mutate, uh, list of tasks, right? Okay, yeah. Let's forget about the TypeScript error for now. I think it's because of an overlap between Frappe doc task and task, which is weird. Okay, this can be, yeah, that was the problem. It could be undefined as well, right? Let's say the request failed or whatever. So we mutate the task list, right? And what we say is that when, in that entire list, find for this particular task ID. And for this particular task ID, just override the new doc that we got from update doc, right? So let's see if that works. Okay. So if I do urgent, right, you'll see that the request is still fired, right? But it's a lot more faster. In fact, I can show you, whether it's fast or not by just looking at the network request while slowing the network request down. So this is if I just mutate the task list, right? I just mutate the task list and nothing else. If I go to network and I slow it down to slow 3G, look at the time it takes on the UI. See, took some time, right? Because this request took about approximately about 2 seconds. The next one, the one to get the list of tasks, right? The first one also took some time, but the next one also took some time, right? So if you're designing for slow network connections, right, this is going to be a problem. I mean, it cannot take so much time to update. So that's one. The other thing is obviously the performance is shit. So that's another. So we get rid of mutate. Now, if we do this, right, even this will take some time and we'll slowly fine tune the performance that it's crazy fast. So now if I do, and I'm on slow 3G again, right? So this will take 2 seconds, but after that it was almost immediate, right? So it did not really wait for this request to resolve, right? So it's a little faster because it's still waiting for this request to be done. But as soon as this original update doc request is done, the UI gets updated. Why? Because we already have the data. We got the new doc. Interesting thing over here is that if I look at the tasks array, right, now this task array doesn't have those 4 5 fields that we fetched. It actually has the entire task row, right? Which is fine, to be honest. We don't really care. We're not really, changing anything. But if it mattered to you, you could do something like, you could only update the fields that you wanted to update, right? In this case, it doesn't really matter. It will not break anything as such, right? So this is still fine, right? But the request is still happening. Look at the network request. You do urgent. Why do we need this, right? We don't need the task list again. We really don't. And so one option could be that we can just say revalidate false, right? This way, if I make a change, right, only this API call happens. So what we're saying is, okay, hey, get doc list, right? I'm mutating you, right? And I know that this is the correct data. Do not go back and refetch the data, right? To be honest, sometimes it's a good practice to actually refetch the data because there might be some dependencies. In this case, probably not. But let's say that if you were closing one task and that closed four others, that would be a case where you would actually want to refetch the entire list, right? Or maybe, yeah, I mean, that would be a good example, right? You submitted one document and three other documents in the same list were affected. Something like a purchase invoice, and then, you return it, right? You create a credit note, debit note, whatever it is, and then it updates the original status, right? Then in that case, you would actually want to refresh the entire list. But over here, at least for the purposes of this tutorial, this works fine. Now, if I update the task, right, it changes. Now, again, slow 3G still takes time, right? I do urgent, takes so much time, takes about 2 seconds to resolve this query, and so 2 seconds for my UI to change. How do we fix that? Again, SWR has that inbuilt, right? So instead of making the API call for update doc first, waiting for it to resolve, then mutating the list of tasks, right? What we can assume is that the task was updated successfully, right? 99.9% of the times, right, the API calls that you make are actually going to succeed unless it's a permission error or whatever, right? If it's a permission error, then you should probably not even allow them to change it in the first place, right? For a better UX. So this is called something called as optimistic updates, right? You look at SWR again. Um, there's called revalidation. So, okay, we'll get into revalidation in a bit, but advanced, where's optimistic updates? It's somewhere over here. Now I forget where it is. Nope. Suspense, middleware, advanced, performance. Yeah. So it has things like, yeah, you can actually look at this, right? This particular uh, understanding SWR document, it actually explains how the entire thing works, right? So here's what we'll do. When the yeah, okay, Prathamesh has found optimistic updates, right? So what we'll do over here is that instead of making the update doc, we'll first assume that the update doc will go through correctly, right? So we'll start with mutate, right? And we'll say task list. And if I go to mutation, and then there will be optimistic update over here, somewhere over here. Yeah. So yeah, we'll mutate it, right? Immediately, we'll make the function call inside, and then we'll pass optimistic data in to it. So we have mutate task list, right? We will then do this. We have existing tasks and task array. So this will be the same as before. Uh, this entire thing will be the same, but let's get to that function in a bit. But before that, we need to say revalidate false. This is our SWR or mutation options and optimistic data, right? The optimistic data will be so the optimistic data again takes a function. You get the existing tasks, right? If there is existing task, you just say, okay, we assume that the task is going to be updated. So the new priority is P, right, for that particular task ID. And then over here, so the cool thing about SWR is that you can actually pass asynchronous functions, right, to your mutations, right? In fact, this is how Raven also works, wherein if you send a message on Raven, right, we don't wait for the API call to finish and then the socket event to return back, right? We actually optimistically update, uh, the UI. So in fact, we are in the process of doing that, but even so, let's say if you had a list of messages, right, on Raven to improve performance, whenever a new message comes in a channel, we wait for the socket event. As soon as the socket event comes in, we update the data, but we do not revalidate the entire request. We do not refetch the entire message stream. So, yeah, what we'll do is that here we'll actually return a promise, and the promise is nothing but update doc, right? So this update doc will return over here. And I know this sounds very, very confusing, maybe. Uh, right? And then it needs to do this. Um, okay. Yeah. Let's see. Let me get rid of this part. Okay. So it says task or undefined is not assignable to task. Hmm, where? Oh, okay. Got it. So it's saying this. Nope. I mean, this should work, but where is it saying argument of type string is not assignable to parameter of type existing tasks? Okay. Ah, okay, 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 okay. So this needs to be just an array. I think so. Nope. Current tasks. Yeah, let's see if the variable. Yeah, okay. Type of parameters, current tasks and current data are incompatible. So current data is of type task array or undefined, and current tasks is of type task array. Well, so that's why I was doing this. And what's the problem? Um, and then it says, okay, type current tasks is not defined. Okay, got it. So when you're returning optimistic data, do not return undefined, is what it's saying. I hope that's what it's saying. So yeah, okay. So okay, what did that do? Do you want me to explain this bit of code again? Right? So there are like three parts to it. You know, this function has three parts to it. So this is my SWR key, right? This is the SWR key. This is the updater function, right? And this is my mutate options. Okay, it looks like a lot of code, but it's actually pretty simple. First of all, what do we want to update? We want to update the list of the tasks, right? Then, if you did you understand this part, this one, right? What we were doing over here. So in the first method, right, we were updating the task list and we were calling mutate, right? This was what we were doing first, right? We were calling update doc, updating the doc, and then, we were saying, okay, go back to the task list and refetch the entire list again, right? We were doing this. So, but this is not very performant, right? Because first of all, you're waiting for this API call to finish. So the user feedback is delayed. Uh, yeah. Then then once that is done, then you're actually waiting for the task list to do. So in this case, on a slow 3G connection, this simple API call would have taken 4 seconds, right? And the user wouldn't really feel that you're on a fast app. So, uh, this, we didn't want to do this. So, and the other thing was that we were actually refetching something that we already have. Why would we do that? So we can get rid of this mutate and we can say, look, mutate the task list, right? But I already have the new task with me. So in the existing task, right, find that task ID and just update it, right? Update that particular row only. And so that's all right. So that's a little fast, right? So now it only waits for update doc. It waits for 2 seconds. So let me comment this out so that you can see it in live action, right? Takes 2 seconds and then it's done, right? So now there's a delay of 2 seconds, uh, and the other problem was that it was fetching. So even with this, right, it was updating the tasks, yes, but it was also revalidating it. We have now said, hey, you know what? This is the third parameter of mutate, of global mutate. Do not revalidate, right? We don't really need to refetch the list again. And be sure that you shouldn't be revalidating it, right? So anyway, this is what we did. Now the problem, even with this approach, is that the feedback is not instant, right? Waits for the first update call to work. Uh, so the other approach is that instead of making the update doc call first, we first mutate it, right? We mutate it, and in mutate there are three variables, right? So the first variable is the SWR key, that remains the same. Second is the updater function. Now in the updater function, what we're doing is that we are now returning a promise. We're not returning, just the array of the new task, right? Because we don't have the new task right now. We are returning a promise, right? Which will return the new tasks, right? So that's done. And then the third is the mutate options, wherein revalidate is false, so do not fetch it again. But the data, assume that this API call will go through. So even before this updater function finishes, running, right, it will actually show the optimistic data to the user. And now the UX that you'll get is just instant. See? So let me see if that updater function even runs or not. Uh, because it'll be a problem if it doesn't run. Let's do slow or fast 3G for now. Yeah, see it updates, right? So if I do slow 3G, see even before it's pending over here, right? But the UI gets updated immediately, right? You look at high quality apps like Linear, and this is exactly what they do, right? So I can mark this as done, and it's instant, right? No loading spinners, nothing. If you were building a Kanban board, right, this is exactly how you would do. Because if you were building a Kanban board, you wouldn't wait, the user drags the card from one column to the other, right? And now you wait for the UI to, like for the API call to finish, and then the list of new cards to come in, and then you render it, right? That'll be a horrible user experience. Great apps actually take this into account, that user feedback should be instant. The other thing is that this also supports rollbacks. So what is rollback? Um, Rollback is nothing but, let's say that my API call fails for some reason, right? I add in some random word. So this will definitely fail. We know that, right? Yeah, it's also throwing an error, but we know that it will fail, right? Ideally, SWR should support rollbacks as well. So that is, if I do urgent, right, it updates it to urgent, but that API call fails and then it reverts back. What if user navigates to other page after the status is updated? Will it cancel the update request? No, that's not how browsers work. That request is already gone, right? The once you navigate to the other page, obviously that promise is still fired. That network request is made, right? So that network request is actually being processed by the server. It's either in transit or it's being processed by the server. So it's gone, right? So the status is updated. If the user navigates to other page after the status is updated in UI, good way to actually segue into that, right? In this case, right, if the user navigates to the other page, the status is updated in the UI, but the request is already made. The request is not cancelled. That's one. If the request succeeds, then the data stays. But if the request fails, it will revert back. It will do that automatically, and that's because we're using global state over here, right? So SWR handles all of that for you, right? So that's essentially, the yeah. So the UI changes because we have optimistic data. I mean, how many times does an API call actually fail? Because if your API calls are failing all the time, then it's not a good app in the first place, right? There are other things that we need to solve. So, like most of the times, API calls don't fail, right? And we assume that, most of the times the API call will not fail. So we show optimistic data. We optimistically update the list. And if the API call fails, then we revert it back, right? I've seen this pattern being used in a lot of the highest quality apps that I've ever used, uh, you know, in my life, right? And uh, yeah, uh, I would recommend, this is like I would say this is something that even I haven't mastered, to be honest, right? While fixing performance issues on Raven, this is something that came up, and I was like, okay, this is how these libraries like SWR and React Query actually help you. Uh, so yeah, the UI changes after the update call fails because this particular promise that you see, right? This update doc, this must have thrown an error, right? And if this promise, so this updater function can be a regular function that returns new data, or it can be a promise that returns new data. If the promise fails, it will roll back. SWR will just roll back to the original state. So I'll show the documentation and then we can look at it. So in optimistic updates, right? Uh, you can also say rollback on error. So by default, anytime the promise fails, you can roll back, right? But you can also say that okay, only roll back if this is the exact error that happens, right? So you can also do that. I've never used this. We actually don't really need to because Frappe, every time it does a rollback, Frappe's default web model is that it does not do, commits in between, right? Database commits in between. It will always, if Frappe.throw it encounters anywhere, it cancels the database transaction in the first place. So we never actually need to roll back on error, but there's automatic rollback inbuilt, right? The update function should be a promise or a asynchronous function to handle the remote mutation. It should return updated data, right? And you can also pass optimistic data, which is exactly what we did. Uh, so yeah, does this make sense? I know it's a little bit complicated, but does this make sense? Okay. So, so see, this would, the new hooks that we are working on is that let's say that on this UI, right, I had this task list, and maybe if I click on a task, right, similar to linear, uh, maybe in my shoes, up, or maybe in inbox, yeah, right, similar to this, right? If we do something like this, right, wherein we have a list of tasks and then we show the task over here and we update something, right? So in linear, what happens is that if I update something over here, right, it will update it over here as well immediately, instant. So they also do that. Now, the new hooks, yeah, no, we also use mutate to get the updated data. That's the whole point, right? We have made this entire code base for a client, right? Even on Raven now, Raven is on the verge of almost moving away from all of that. But we've used this, like we've used mutate everywhere. Like you'll save a form, and then after saving the form, you get the updated document, but we're still, refetching it, which is kind of pointless. We've fixed parts of it, but I think it will take some time. Um, but yeah, so if you were building something like this, right, the one of the main things that we're doing is that so on this inbox would be fetched using use frappe get doc list, right? But this entire issue would be fetched using use frappe get doc. The new hooks that we're trying to think of is that let's say if someone uses use frappe update doc or use frappe delete doc or use frappe create doc, right? What if end users don't even have to do any of this? All of this code that I've written, what if they don't have to do this? Right? What if they just pass that, okay, yeah, turn on optimistic or whatever, and our hooks automatically update any active lists, any active docs, right? Automatically. So if you use Frappe update doc, it will automatically not only update the list, but also update the doc, right? And then any other extra mutation that you want to do for your custom API calls and all, you can do that. But we're thinking along those lines, wherein, let's say if someone submits a document, can we mutate it automatically, right? So that's one. The other thing is, if you were to look at real-time event listeners, right? So use Frappe doc type event listener, and then I'm going to, mutate this. So this is a bound mutate, but that's fine. In fact, even over here, right, what we have seen is that obviously, when you listen to the list update method, right, Frappe actually tells you which particular, document is updated. Like it will tell you the doc type. You obviously know the doc type already, task, but it tells you the doc name as well. So we were thinking that over here, instead of mutating the entire list, we can create hooks that can mutate, just that row or the document somewhere, right? Get the latest data and update just that row. Uh, it's complicated because someone could technically do something like this, right? And then we are in a bit of trouble if you do as start date. So it's a little complicated, but we're working on that. Now, interesting thing over here, right? If we have event listeners, and you know what I'm going to do is that I'm going to main.tsx and I'm going to remove strict mode for now because that's what's causing one issue with socket. So you don't need to do that. I'll enable it again. Um, let's go to no throttling. Okay. Now if I go to socket, it should work, hopefully. Socket, yeah, socket is working, I think so. Nope. Messages, nope. Oh, this is weird. Have I given it the correct? Maybe go to fetch and see. In response, so it says upgrade to WebSocket. Ah, okay. Well, it says it's refused, connection refused from here. Ah, okay. Maybe we go to read config and then in proxy options, I don't know if setting up localhost works, but let's see. Yeah, now these fail. Great. Yeah, I'll have to see why that socket event is not working, but I'll just build it for now and then show that, right? So let me change proxy options and let me change main.tsx back. Okay. Oh, sorry. We need to do this task. Okay, the next thing that I would like to show is, these socket events, right? So we'll build the app and, then check it on production. There's a problem with that. So we build app scope. Okay, perfect. So we go to localhost 8026 slash scope and then slash task. Is it slash tasks or yeah, tasks? Okay. Let's look at the network request over here, right? And also let's look at the WebSocket events, right? We have this messages. Hey, did I not save that page? Oh, we do have that. Yeah, should work. Mm, yeah, okay. Now it's subscribing to that doc. Okay. So if I do this, right, so it gets a list update. See, right? It gets a list update, and then if I go to, look at my fetch request, see, because we're using that, no, we are already giving socket port to Frappe provider. That's not the problem. The problem is with the Vite proxy, right? I somehow fixed it on Raven and then I forgot how to fix it. So, uh, and only on my local machine. I think everyone else is still broken. Uh, so anyway, this task gets, the use Frappe get doc list gets called again, right? Because the real time event comes in, right? One option to actually handle that is that we can look at, there's a, you must have always, whoever has used Frappe React SDK must have wondered what's the difference between an is loading and an is validating, right? Is loading is when there's no data. Is validating is when someone's mutating that data, right? So we can say that, okay, if it's not validating, right, then only do you mutate, right? And I'll build this app again. So that way, that extra call doesn't happen because we know that the user has already started, revalidating it. I'll also tell you some caveats, where that doesn't really work well. So let's look at the fetch request now. If I change to high, is this even shift R? Okay, yeah, this is still working. So if it's not validating, then mutate. Okay. Maybe there's enough of a delay between the socket event. Yeah. Okay. Let's try doing it in slow 3G. Nope. Still validating over here. Why is that? Did I not build it? Technically, is validating should be true. Nope. Okay, so let's try it on our local machines, right? We'll say tasks is validating. We'll just try to print this on our localhost 8080. Okay. Console, let's get rid of this. Okay. So it's not validating because we have uh, uh, the reason is because we have kept revalidate as false, right? Somewhere, I think in priority selector, yeah, we kept the revalidate option to false, and that's the issue. So that's why it's happening. So, okay, one way to avoid the problem statement is that let's say that I still want the event listener, right? But I still want to so I still want the event listener because other people can update the task and I want those real-time updates, right? But I don't want to make a separate API call, when requests come in, right? So like when I myself update a task, I don't want to refresh the data. But if someone else updates the tasks, maybe we want to refresh the data, right? So the way to do it is that we get this event over here, right? Uh, Especially because we have kept revalidate as false, that's why is validating is coming up as false, right? So the way to do it is if we get event, right, we'll check if the event user is not the current user. If the events user is not the current user, then we know that the current user has nothing to do with this, right? And you can mutate the data. Problem that let's say what if the user has multiple tabs, right? So there's really no getting around it, right? Uh, so one way that you can do is but why wouldn't it show is validating? So let me just look at SWR and it will trigger a revalidation, mark the data as expired, and trigger a refetch for the resource. Um, Throw an error, populate cache, revalidate. Should the cache revalidate once the asynchronous update resolves? Hmm. So that's the problem. Like we always have to revalidate. I don't like that option. Uh, oh, okay, okay. So if there is okay, so if there is a mutation that's already ongoing, then we can, hmm, interesting. This is something that even I don't know how to fix then because I don't want to revalidate. But where is mutating? Where can I get is mutating from? Is mutating, is it returned by the hook? I don't think so. No. See, is validating is. Okay, let's actually check if is loading is true or not, right? So let's not this, sorry. So is loading is true or not? Let's check this, right? When we update. Oh, sorry. Yeah, see, comes up as false, right? So how would we do that? Like, so the problem statement is that if if the revalidation happens from our end, right, then ignore the update, else actually update it. I mean, one option could be that we wire up something. We have like a global state somewhere, where we store, but that's kind of pointless, right? Then what's the point of of doing all of this? So, um, interesting. Could be that keep previous data on loading slow is paused, whatever, whatever. So, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I'll have to figure this out, right? Probably not now because, but there should technically be a way to track that someone else is mutating the data. So if there's an ongoing mutation, probably don't do this, right? So yeah, I think what's going to happen is that we'll probably have to maintain some global state to do that, right? Because if we want to actually make it performant and cut down on unnecessary, fetches, that's probably how you would do. Okay. Is mutating comes from use SWR mutation. We don't use this hook, so interesting. Okay, cool. So I'll have a look into this, but the idea with our Frappe React SDK version 2 is that the things that we did over here, how about we do it automatically, right? And that's kind of what we're looking into. So this is done. Now the other thing that we'll do is that we'll actually show the user avatars, right? And we'll use global state for that as well. So let's look at, so over here we want to show who all is this, task assigned to, right? And we already have the assigned thing over here. So let's actually assign this to someone first. Assign it to me and then complete by today, priority, medium, whatever. Add. Um, okay. So if I look at here in my network call, in response, I should see assigned as a string, but it's actually an array, right? And we need to JSON.parse this, right? So let's bring up on ShatCN, let's look at avatar because we would need this. Let's copy this, install this. Okay, so we have the avatar. Now let's look at. Okay, before we move over here, right? Is everyone clear with what we exactly did with mutations, like with global mutations? Okay, cool. So I'm going to call this user assignees, right? And over here as well, I'm going to just give the users. I'm going to keep a prop as users, right? And then in task row, I'm just going to call user assignees. So users is equal to task dot assign, right? And now we have this user. Now we know that this is a string, so we can actually get uh, user IDs is equal to how is it JSON dot. It's not. I think it's capital, right? JSON dot parse, right? So we have this now user IDs, and I can actually just print user IDs, and it should. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we have the user ID. What we want to do actually is we want to show their photo and stuff, right? And we want to fetch the photo and all of that. So we will user avatar is equal to this, right? And we will map through user IDs, and we will call user avatar, and we'll also pass in a key. So yeah, user avatar. Wait, something's wrong. Yeah, better. Okay, avatar, not RadixUI. Damn. Let's go to this. Yeah. Fuck. Okay, no. Got this, and then we have this, right? Okay. So this CN thing, what we can do is that we can just say, the fallback is user dot carat 0, right? So the first character. And then for the image, we'll need something, right? So remember that we'll actually, user.carat is doesn't really make much sense because user could be, in this case, it's administrator, which is actually the user ID. But you could have something like, like your email IDs, right? Because in Frappe, that's the user ID that's actually returned. Now we need to get the user info. I hope we have an API in Frappe to get the user info. Let's actually check if we do. So I know there is something called as get user info, something like this. Yeah, but I don't know if it's uh, what we need is an API to get user info for avatar. Hmm. We don't have any, so we'll have to create our own API that also segues into use Frappe get call. So we'll first create our own API and then see, how we go from there. Why is this screaming at me? Okay, yeah, cool. So let's go to scope. In scope, we'll create a new folder called APIs, right? Or just API, and then in new folder we can create user.py, right? Import Frappe at frappe.whitelist. Wait, what? Uh, yeah, def get user avatar. Uh, hell no. So we'll return the image, right? Using Frappe dot get cached value user image, and full name will also be this, right? So we return the image and the full name, and we call get user avatar in our API call. So over here we do const use Frappe get call, right? And we say what's the name of the app? It's scope dot API dot user dot get user avatar, right? And then we can pass it the user, and let's see if we get it. Get user avatar, yeah, and it takes in user. Okay, let's see if we get that. Yeah, we do get it. Right, image is null, that's all right, but we do get this. So one thing we need to, there's no size or something. Okay, we can pass it a class name, right? So class name h4w4. That'll make it smaller. So, or h6w6. Okay, we get this. We can, you know, declare the types. Get profile, probably. I mean, I've just created a new API, so it doesn't matter. But get user avatar response, and we can do, um, was it avatar? And I think it was full name, right? But this actually comes inside a message scope block, right? So it's message and then get user avatar response. So, oh no, it's image, not avatar. Okay, now here's what we'll do, right? We'll say that we want data dot message dot image, and in fallback we need data dot message dot full name dot char 0, or just user.carat, right? So that we get some fallback. And in alt, we'll do data dot message dot full name or user, right? So let's see. I'll have to set up. Let me actually, you know, remove this and assign it to the other user. Assign to, yeah, and then we'll add some. Okay, we'll add some photos over here. Mm, okay, doesn't matter. Yeah, got it. Now, once we have that photo, okay, we see that that photo has come up over here. We can remove this console log so that it's cleaner. Wait, I have removed it. Okay, we need to just refresh. Okay, cool. So now let's say that I have multiple tasks, right? And I want to show this image. Now, one thing that you might be wondering is, well, you're calling useWrap get call in this component, right? Let's create another task from the backend. So, set up ShadCN and Radix. And then I'll assign it to the same user. Okay. If I come over here, let's do this. Okay. See, what was the name of the API that we just used? Get user avatar, right? Let's see how many times get user avatar gets called, right? If I refresh the page. just once. So even though it's being rendered twice, the component is being rendered twice, it's not that, it will actually refetch every time the component is mounted. This is essentially what SWR does for us. It maintains a global state and it reads data from that global state, right? And I'll tell you the ramifications. And for people who have worked with React, this will be amazing. But even before that, the problem right now is that, let's say if I change this to high, and if I come up over here, I change my focus or something, and then I come up over here, it calls the same avatar again, right? But I mean, how many times does the actual user avatar change? We should actually never revalidate this, right? Once it's fetched, like done with it. So we can pass some SWR options to it. So the third key is SWR key, right? This is, we don't need to pass anything over here because the key that Frappe React SDK generates for you is perfect. Now, the options, we can say revalidate on focus is false. So revalidate on focus is like, what usually happens is that if you were building like single page apps, especially a business app, people would keep that tab open forever, right? And they will, move between windows and stuff. So they might come to that window an hour later and they might want to see the latest data. Within that time frame, those few hours, right, the socket events have stopped working, right? Because that's how Chrome and then these other browser engines handle it, right? They want to preserve battery, etc. So the idea is that once it comes back to focus, right, just revalidate it. Whatever is the active hook, not all the hooks that have been used, but whatever is the active hook or whatever is the active SWR request, just revalidate it. In this case, we probably don't need to, right? We also don't need to revalidate if it's stale. Now, what is stale? SWR maintains a stale timer. Like, it will say okay, for this request, this request is probably stale after 2 seconds. I've seen that it makes, API calls after every few minutes or something. You can set that stale timer. In this case, we are saying that this data never goes stale. This data will stay like it is. But if you wanted to reduce the number of revalidations, you can actually set something called as a deduping interval, right? And this is in milliseconds, so you can do something like this, 16 to 16 to something like this, right? And this deduping interval is basically dedupe request with the same key in this time span, right? So that's one. And then there is revalidate on mount, which is by default true. Uh, and there's revalidate on reconnect, right? Revalidate on reconnect is again the same thing, right? If you were building like an offline first app and the user regains network, you actually want to revalidate requests. So in this case, we can actually keep everything as false because this wouldn't change. And if the user wants to change it, just refresh the entire page, right? It's not critical, first of all. And the other thing is that at least the user avatar isn't, right? Who it's assigned to is critical, but the user's photo, etc., not critical as such. So this is something that you can do to improve performance. User is a doc type, yes. Why are we not using use Frappe doc list? Because we don't need all the fields, that's one. And the other thing is that why would we need a listing API over here? Right? Because it will return an array and then you would have to manage the array and all of that, right? I'm assuming that you're saying that okay, just use filter. But instead of that, this API is actually far more performant because this API is using the cache. So, if let's say 100,000 users are on the same issue board, they are seeing the same user avatars, right? Everyone makes a call to the database to actually get just the user avatar that's not performant. So we cache it, and hence the custom API. So this is, in my opinion, this is better. Uh, what if user is logged out in another tab? That tab will still be on instead of logged off, right? If we said revalid has been set over. No, if the user is logged out, so The thing is that if you're using cookie-based authentication, right, the user is logged in everywhere, right? Uh, if there are two tabs, if you log out from one, the user is logged out from the other tab as well. So, I mean, that won't be true, right? Could be true with separate browsers altogether, but yeah. Uh, and revalidate on focus by default is on, right? And we have turned it off in this case, right? If one user log in and upload private file, then how to access second user? Okay, so see the private file again. That's a Frappe framework issue, right? So uh, if you go to my file list, I uploaded this image, right? This image actually has an attached to doc type of user and which user and which field, right? So these three combined actually control whether your user has access to the file or not, right? So it's based on the user permissions of that field. If there's no field level permission, then it's based on the document level permission, right? If the user has read access, then they'll be able to read this file. So it's based on that. It's got nothing to do with React or anything. Uh, okay, so I think this is clear, right? So this actually saves a lot of time, right? Because if you actually look at the way you know Frappe handles it, right? They will actually maintain like a global object somewhere. They usually do that for all the meta and everything. I can actually show that. Let's see. There's something called locals, right? And there's a bunch of stuff over here that they have stored, right? They use this quite often, and they use this to save form states and stuff, right? You wouldn't need to do any of this because it's all stored by SWR using keys. So yeah, and this also reduces prop drilling, and you are pretty sure that this get user avatar isn't called unnecessarily unlimited times, right? Um, so yeah, we actually covered a lot of things, right? We covered, optimistic updates. So now you can actually build a Kanban board. We covered, error rollbacks. We covered global state. We covered bound mutates. We also covered, global state and how to do this. Now, one of the main benefits that I was alluding to earlier, right, is that you do not need context anymore. So you see in Raven, uh, what we used to do earlier, because we didn't know that SWR actually does all of this. What we used to do earlier was we used to fetch and I think we're still doing it. We're in the process of migrating it away. We were fetching the entire user list, right, and then keeping it in a context. And so your React tree looked something like context one, context two, context three. There are like multiple contexts, right? And that's not very performant. And then we realized that, what, we don't really need to do that. We just need to create this one hook that fetches the list of users, right? And then just use that hook everywhere. Wherever we need the user list, just use that hook everywhere, right? The global state is already maintained. It's much more performant than context. And so that's now, that's our default, method of actually getting it done, right? From an ERPNext perspective, if you were building, let's say, a form like a purchase invoice form has so many tabs, etc., right? And you might need, various kinds of settings, etc., to actually control, whether certain fields are visible or certain fields are required or whatever. Uh, and you can actually just create these hooks that fetches a system settings or something, right? Account settings, buying settings, uh, and it will just store that for you. So you don't really need to store fetch it somewhere and then pass it down to your entire tree. No need to do that. Just create a hook. So in this case, what we could have done is that we could have extrapolated this as a hook and then just call this hook in user avatar and anywhere else where we are showing user avatars, right? Uh, so yeah, that's SWR, revalidations, etc. One thing that I would recommend if you're using Frappe React SDK, take SWR. There's this so install the React DevTools, so you'll get components, right? This page definitely has React. I have no idea why it's saying that. Okay. Uh, Use DevTools or also use SWR's DevTools, right? So it will actually tell you what's all stored in your cache and everything. So let's see. Actually, network, no throttling. Okay, this comes up. SWR is not coming up for some reason. But we can do that in, let's see over here. Okay, maybe their tool is broken. But I used to look at the entire cache over here. Uh, so there's another trick that you can use is that, see on Raven, the loading time is instant, right? Just hit refresh, it's instant. The reason is what we are doing is that we are actually taking that cache and we are storing it in our local storage app cache. See, all the all the API calls that have been done, right? We just store it in the cache in local storage, right? Eventually, I think it will run out of space, maybe, but we don't know. It probably works, right? So everything's stored over here. Uh, get logged user, and then what's the data and everything. So you can do this using cache provider. Um, but yeah, but this leads to instant, loading. And then it starts revalidating it, but for the user, there's no loading time. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot. We've covered use wrap get call. We've covered update doc. Uh, how about we cover deletion now, right? We can also cover deletion, and um, let's see. What else did we have to cover? I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, this is probably the most advanced thing that I've already covered. Um, what do you want me to cover? And if there are any doubts, whatsoever?
Maybe one question from yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, in the project filters,
Hmm.
you used use memo, and
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what that's used for.
Oh, okay.
Like why we
So,
pass the filter directly.
yeah, yeah. So, if I don't use memo, right, I can do something like this. And if status, filters dot push status, I can do this and I can get rid of this. This is perfectly valid code, right? Uh, I mean, the type error is fine, but this is perfectly valid code. What memo does is that, see, in this particular page, right, I don't want to compute the filters every time anything changes, right? So in React, this page would also change if someone changes the page number, right? So it will re-render. And as a part of that re-rendering, it will perform this computation as well again, right?
Uh,
Use memo, I have just, it's a habit now, right? Which probably I should get rid of. But use memo, what it does is that it memoizes. So this second array that we have, right? Status, where we are passing status, we are saying, look, whenever status changes, run this. Otherwise, just take the memoized value, right? So it's more of a performance thing. Now,
mm,
we wouldn't need this once React compiler is coming in. In React compiler, uh, this will like they'll start automatically memoizing stuff, so we wouldn't need use memo or use callback. But It's sometimes needed so that we reduce the amount of, unnecessary re-renders, right? That's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks.
How to send form data and use Frappe post call. Oh, simple, right? So I'll use it with priority selector for now. Okay, because I don't have yeah, I don't have another place where I can set that up quickly. So you do post call, you pass in the method, right? In this case, I'll do frappe.client dot set value, and there's call. So over here, what you can do is you can say call, and you can just give it the entire object over here. So this could be whatever data it is, right? But I don't know what set value does. Like, what's the syntax? Actually, I need set value. I'll just get so many results. Uh, okay, Explorer, I want it for Frappe. 15. Okay, yeah. Set value takes doc type, name, field name, and value. Okay. Doc name, is it doc name or name? It's name, right? Yeah, it's name. It's not doc name. Field name and value. Field name, value. Yeah, you can do it this way. This should do. Yeah, Jambi's already given you an example as well. Does that answer your question, Neeraj? Okay. Yeah. So the other question is, does Frappe React come out of the document submission hook out of the box? No, for now it doesn't. We are working on that. We are actually waiting for V2 to be stable, right? Once version 2 in Frappe is stable, I think that'll be in V16, we'll add that. Because then it's just a matter of doing API resource, your doc type, doc name slash submit. So we'll add that then. And we're also working on, let's say if you submitted a document, then you, instead of, manually mutating stuff, what if we can, mutate it ourselves? We're also working on that. So that will also be a part of, submission. Submission, cancellation, updating after submit, all of that, is in the works. But you can do that using just the regular, I think it's frappe dot form dot save docs or something similar. You can use that. How can we make Gantt and calendar? Well, for that, you would have to code in React, right? You can use certain libraries that are available. There's full calendar that we recently implemented. So, um, and I'm pretty sure there's something available for Gantt charts as well, right? So yeah, this is something that you would have to, you know, implement yourself. Uh, okay, how can we implement search functionality using use Frappe get doc list? Good question. Let's do it over here, right? In tasks. So actually, let me close this app. I'm being confused. Let's go to task. Let's do it over here. So we need a state variable to hold our search query, right? And we can say subject, set subject or something. Let's forget about this for now. Let's create an input field, and let's set the value to subject and on change and search. So now we want to search from here, right? Uh, what we can do is we can say filters and subject like something like this, right? Filters, and filters is an array of arrays, sorry. So yeah, something like this, right? Should do. I'll tell you the problems with that approach as well in a bit. But let's say that I search for setup. Okay. Oh, is it not wired? Set subject like subject. Oh, okay, yeah. Remember, as I told you that you have to be careful with the mutation keys, right? So we'll also have to be careful about that. So we can say, task list and then subject. And just so that I can check, when we do data fetching, the key itself, advanced usage, yeah, the key itself can be anything, but when I'm doing mutations and revalidations, okay, tell all SWRs with this key to revalidate. We'll have to check if this works. Okay, let's actually try doing that. But anyway, we'll have to pass in a different key, right? If you did not pass in any key, right, and our priority dropdown would break with that, just keep in mind. Then this would have worked fine because Frappe React SDK creates a key for us, right? So this works fine. But if we add a key, then just remember that the second argument, like it can be an array, right? So, just make sure that it's unique. That if subject changes, just change the key. And then if I type, setup, it works. Problem is, uh, yeah, if there are more than 1,000 rows, I mean, it is recommended, right? You can just set the limit to 1,000 or something, whatever you want, right? In our yesterday we implemented pagination, so I think that's fine. Uh, okay, there are two problems with this implementation. The first problem let's talk about is the fact that I'm a fast typer, right? I mean, that's insane. So what we need to do is we need to create a debounced state, right? So debounced subject. Now, use debounce, we don't have a hook like that for now, right? But we can create a hook somewhere. I'll create it in the hooks file. Use debounce.ts, right? So use debounce.ts will have a state. So let's get rid of this. Okay, let's do this. Um, use state, right? And then in use state, the first argument is usually like it returns all of that. That's all right. And then we need a use effect as well. Init value. For now, it can be any, right? So init value. In fact, we can actually give it a type as well. This is all advanced TypeScript, but use effect debounced value. Debounced value will be a state as well. I think. I mean, actually, you know what? Let me copy it from here because the implementation in this is way better. Command F, use debounce. Yeah, perfect. Use state. Okay, so use state, we maintain the state value, right? And then we have this use effect. Oh, okay, so this is a little weird because the way that we use it in Frappe React SDK is that we get the text and we get the debounce. That's it. So, okay, yeah, what I was doing was correct. Sorry. Yeah, we'll need, I mean, what I want to do is that I just want to, use this as use debounce, right? And, not worry about that. So something like this. So debounced value, set debounced value, and then in use effect, we can do value, right? And yeah, okay, perfect. And then we can return debounced value and set value as const, right? Okay, I'll explain what I did, right? So one is the original state that we need. The other is the state that we need for the debounced value, right? So the debounced value will be a little delayed. In this case, let's actually delayed by 250 milliseconds. Um, we can also give it the delay over here, which is number, which is equal to 250, and then you can have it over here. Yeah. So what we're doing is that whenever value changes, right, this use effect runs and it will, start a timer with the given delay, um, and it will then set the debounced value, right? If there is a new value change, so that then it will, clean up the earlier function and it will, clear the timeout, right? So you'll have to understand how use effect works, but basically, initially this will run, right? As soon as the value changes, let's say the user types, in between 250 milliseconds, the cleanup function of the previous effect runs, clears the timeout, then the new effects handler runs, and the timeout is reset, right? And then we are just returning just like set state, right? We're just returning it to, debounced value instead of the actual value. So the idea would be the same. And if I go to Arc now, where is my browser? Yeah. So see, not enough, requests. The problem is that it's not actually, registering the input. Why? Because we've controlled this input. Instead of doing that, let it be an uncontrolled input and let it always update it via on change, right? So set up React app. So not enough requests, right? So now it's debounced. The other problem is that with this, if I change it to high, right, this does not change. Why? It's because of the mutation, right? The mutation hook has now changed, or the array has changed. Let me close this out. So the array's first element is now task list, and then it's this. That's a problem, and I honestly do not know how exactly to solve that problem. Uh, that's interesting. So one way would be that revalidation. So how to mutate SWR, how to mutate multiple keys. Yeah, now this is something that we can do, right? So we can in our mutation key, right? In where is that? Damn, forgot. Was it in the priority selector, I think? Yeah. In priority selector, what we can do is instead of passing in a string key, we can pass in a function, right? And the function can, I'll close this as well. Yeah. The function takes in a key and type of key, we'll just check that. So we get a key, we say if type of key equals to an array, right? So in this case, it will be an object. Then we know that key key zero element, key zero element is equal to task list. Right, let me get rid of that. So we can do something like this, right? Wherein key, let's see if that works. Yeah, it does work. Wait, why are there so many? Okay. Now the problem is okay, so the problem is that, see, uh, with a different key, we want to mutate the data, right? Interesting. And we only want to mutate task list wherever task list exists. Uh, the problem that we are running into is that existing tasks are also at risk, right? Existing, so this is always running. So if there are like 100 keys, and there could be, right? If I have 100 search queries, there could be 100 keys. It will run update doc 100 times, not recommended. So let's actually get rid of the change that we made, and let's find a different way of doing it. So this is pretty advanced because I haven't done it myself ever, but okay, one easy hack is that instead of using that key, we can do something like where is tasks. One easy hack would be that instead of doing this, we can mutate it using an effect, right? But I wouldn't recommend that. So let's actually get back to this. So after this mutation is done, damn, how would we do that? That's a problem. Uh, Mutate multiple items. Someone has done something. So, mm, okay. So, yeah, I was thinking we could update the cache directly. So, what we actually want to do, right, is that we want to update. Yeah, see, I want to update all, but I only want to make one API call to do it, right? That's what we want to do. And that is, yeah, I don't think it's possible very easily. That is something that I'll have to think about, and maybe you guys can also think about, right? Because that doesn't seem to be quite simple or straightforward. Um, hmm. Do you guys have any ideas? Have you used SWR before in this scenario, wherein you want to revalidate or you want to mutate, but you want to mutate a bunch of keys, but you only want to make one entry, right? You only want to make one call to the updater function. So SWR update multiple keys, but run update function once. Um, yeah, I think it's now what they've done is that they're basically saying that just do it with the cache. So yeah, I think passing objects, yes, whatever, yes. Yeah, this is interesting. Hmm. I'll have to think about this, but from what I can understand, from like a very cursory search is we would have to, take the cache and then update the cache for all of those keys, right? This wouldn't be something that's given out of the box with Frappe, React SDK, or SWR for that matter. So, I mean, one option could be that we run this mutation, right? And then we also mutate all of the other task list with optimistic data, right? That could be one option. So for example, we can do something like mutate this, right? And in fact, instead of doing this, we can do array dot is array key, right? If it's task list and key dot length is greater than one. Or actually, forget about that, right? We can, call this as the second argument, and you're slowly starting to see that it's getting a little complicated. It's getting a little out of hand now, right? So I don't recommend this, but this is something that I'm just trying. After this mutation is done, yeah, something like that. But I do not have a lot of hopes with this. So that will be an issue. You're right. If we search and we use the same key, we won't be able to, mutate it directly. So, unless you have some better ideas. What I know for sure is that what apps like Linear do is that they do everything client side. So even the search happens client side. They don't really, because they've already loaded all of the data, but that doesn't really make much sense for, because they only do issue tracking. But in our case, it doesn't make much sense. So this is something that I'll have to look out for when I'm building those new hooks. Dependent fields. There'll be multiple keys. So how do we fix for that? Yeah, food for thought, I guess. So, any more questions? But at least you know how to, perform search, right? If we didn't have that priority selector, this would work fine. So, and you wouldn't need this key either in the first place. So, yeah, any more questions? Because I think we're done for the day. It's a lot to, cover in one day. I'm facing a user permission error. Which user are you logged in from? Probably, yeah. Like, if you are able to, are you even logged in the first place? Check that. Are cookies being sent in your network request? So check all of that and then, see. Any more questions? Or is there something that you would like me to cover for tomorrow? Because more or less we're done with the basic concepts, right? I mean, there are a few hooks that are pending, use traffic get doc, but you already get the idea, right? That what they do. Uh, so, what would you like to cover, like me to cover tomorrow and day after tomorrow? Anyone? You can also speak if needed. Speak, chat, whatever. Raven plus ChatGPT, accessing child tables, yes, we can cover that. I mean, what do you mean by accessing child tables? Like, getting the data and then updating it. Yeah, so yeah, we can do that. We can probably make a page for either task or for project, like a form page, if possible. Yeah, so that will be quite complex, right? Raven plus ChatGPT, we are working on something similar, right? But it won't be ready until, you know, uh, I don't know, maybe October, right? Till the Frappeverse. I mean, that's the goal at least. So,
Maybe, I mean, we've seen you do it a little bit, but some common debugging strategies. Like,
yeah,
is there any debugger you can use? Like, can you use the browser debugger properly
yeah.
with
Yeah.
the,
Browser debugger, how do you test for performance? Where are the performance pitfalls? The problem is that, it's a very simple app, so I probably can't do it over here, but do you want me to do that on Raven? That's also React.
yeah, maybe.
Okay. So yeah, we can definitely take something like that. We can go to our components and our profiler and see what's causing, issues. That's one. Yeah, that
Yeah,
seems
maybe
like a
also
good
like
idea.
step-by-step code execution. I like that in Python development a lot, that you can just step through the
Ah, right, the
execution of,
debugger, right.
yeah, if
I don't,
possible.
I don't use it myself, right? And I
Mhm.
haven't set it up myself. I just write code and then see does it work, does it not work, right?
Mhm.
So I don't even know how to set it up or if it's even possible because React doesn't work that way. Like React is not interpreted, right? So
Mhm.
when computing, when checking, whether it needs to re-render a component or not, it looks at each line of hook in the same order, and that's why you cannot violate some of those rules of hooks. Um,
Mhm.
so probably not possible, but maybe we can figure it out, right? Or maybe in a live stream with Hussein or something. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, but definitely like performance, how do you identify performance bottlenecks? What can you do to fix it? I think that's one thing that we can cover, right? Apart from that, everything is just basic React. Uh, is there anything else that you would like me to cover? I don't know what the in my original post I had added 5 days, so there should be a lot. Background scheduling of tasks. That's more of a Frappe thing, but we can do it. Uh, yeah, so we can fix up the routing tomorrow, right? Maybe we can show OAuth. Some people wanted OAuth, right? So maybe we can show that. Maybe we can also show 2FA. We have 2 days remaining, right? So we can do this. We have done these two, right? I hope these two are clear, right? Because those are the basics. Then we had optimistic data and real-time updates. And we did do some refactor wherein we stopped prop drilling, mutate, and just, did it that way. I will also research how to, mutate when you have like dynamic keys. I'll research that. I think it's more of a cache thing, but that's something that, if I have the answer by tomorrow, I can share that. Um, yeah. Anything else? Background scheduling, we can take it up. I don't think it'll take more than 10-15 minutes. Anything else that you would like me to try? Actually, you know what? Background scheduling works very well with Raven and ChatGPT integration. So I don't know. Maybe we can do something about that. Can we look into React Native for mobile apps? We can. Let me ask, Pratmesh, can we show them the mobile app, like how it was set up? Okay, so yeah, Pratmesh can show, how Frappe React SDK was used on a React Native project. It's still a work in progress, Raven, but we can show that as well. Maybe we can take that up on Friday, right? So Friday we can, just go nuts, take up weird things, uh, and maybe the Chat GPT thing we can take it up on Friday, and then the React Native thing we can take it up on Friday. Tomorrow, let's actually try, doing the basics over here, right? So, like, how do you look at performance? How do we get rid of context and stuff? Um, and yeah, but pretty much like we've covered, quite a few advanced topics over here, right? All the way from here to, especially this one is way advanced. So yeah, kudos. Frappe deployment production. There's a video by Geoffrey Karani. I think he's done it better because I learned it from him. Deploy ERPNext AWS. Yeah. Yeah, this one. So I can show that to you. Like, can share the link here. You can see this. And that's version 14, but you can check his. version 15 version as well. Like he must have it. So he also has a YouTube video on it, so you can watch that. What else? What else? Ideas. I'll be prepared. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we can conclude today's session, right? And we'll see each other tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.